You know, I was thinking, what do you remind me of? And I was thinking of a movie. You know what you remind me of? Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You really do. And I'll tell you why. Because people may agree with you or disagree with you or this or whatever, but you're very earnest, and you're trying to do the right thing.
Well, there's three things that I wanted to point out about the speech today that I think are important. The first is that his unwillingness to accept significant enforcement triggers is problematic, because without that, we're going to be right back here again in 4 to 5 years. You know, God bless his heart, because he was a fantastic president, but one of the mistakes that they made back in '86 under President Reagan and the decision that was made, and this is not a criticism of him, I just didn't think they knew about this issue at the time the way we know about it now, is they didn't do the enforcement mechanisms, or let me say, they didn't put in place sufficient assurances that the system would work. And so it led to 11, and at its peak, 12 million people in this country.
Let me stop you right there. I want to clear this up, because I was there. Yeah. I was at the Justice Department. It wasn't my issue, but I was chief of staff to the Attorney General. Let me tell you something. This amnesty was pushed by Senator Simpson, Congressman Mazzoli, by Democrats and Republicans, and Reagan resisted it and resisted it. And finally, they insisted on some of the triggers, not so much triggers, but conditions in this thing, including funding of the border security. And then, of course, they withheld it. And that's what a lot of us worry about now.
Yeah. Well, then that's why it's important that it be structured the right way. Now, here's what we've done. The only thing that's been announced here is principles. You have to, as you know, principles is not a law. A law is legislative language that's written. And I've said it publicly, and I've said it to the group in meetings we've had. I've said it in the principles I've outlined before. This doesn't work, and it won't have my support if the trigger isn't real. And that's one of the things we're going to have to work on. You can call anything you want a trigger, but it better be real. And it's not because I'm trying to be tougher than anybody. It's not about being tougher than anybody else on this issue. It's because if we don't do that, we will be right back here again in 3 to 4 to 5 years. And I don't ever want to have to deal with this issue this way again. So, number one, the president didn't mention that. You'll also notice one of the things he left out is the need for a modernized guest worker program. And when I hear it, understand what that means. That means that that has to adjust to the economy. If unemployment is high, you don't need that many guest workers. If unemployment is low and there's construction's booming and there's not enough people here to do the job, and you can certify that, because sometimes people like to say there's not enough people to do that job here, but there is. Assuming all that's in place, one of the things we need is a modernized guest worker program, because a lot of people don't want to be citizens or residents. They want to come work for a few months and go back to their country. And the unions always resist that. And in fact, when he was a senator, President Obama voted for a poison pill amendment that on this very issue. And that's problematic as well. And the last thing I'm concerned about is that he keeps pushing this time frame of, this needs to move quickly and this needs to move fast. I'm more concerned about doing this right than I am about doing this fast. This is a monumental issue that impacts the lives of millions of people and the future of our country and our economy. Certainly there's no need for unnecessary delay, but this needs to be done the right way. I mean, I'm part of a working group that's going to draft a starting point, but then we've got 92 other senators that have an opinion on this, and we've got the public, and we've got the House of Representatives and their leadership and their members, and you've got the American people that want to have some input into what this looks like. And I think it would be a terrible mistake to cook up something in private and then hoist it on the Senate and say, here it is, take it or leave it. And I won't be a part of that as well. And I don't think that's where we're headed, by the way, but I think it would be a mistake to create these artificial timelines and say, unless it's ready by date certain, the president's going to force us to do this or do that. I mean, that's just very counterproductive. And by the way, it's not the way the Constitution says our republic works either. But we need to deal with that in a way that's responsible so that it never happens again. But even more important than that, we need to have a modern legal immigration system that works, because our country needs one that works. And as I've said over and over again, one of the great flaws, one of the great lies, quite frankly, that's been spread throughout the last few years is that conservatism is anti-immigrant and anti-immigration. That is false. Conservatism is pro-legal immigration, as are the vast majority of Americans. And our job is to create a legal immigration system that works, a legal immigration system that functions, that's good for America, and helps build our future. And that's really at the heart of this effort, really, for me.
Yeah, but for some people, this de facto amnesty, as you called it the other day, and you're correct, this is a political issue, and it will never stop being a political issue. I want to ask you a question. There's a whole different media out there that a lot of us, especially me, I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
And it's a media that focuses on people who are here who are Hispanic. And I'm wondering, how are they responding to you? Are you getting trashed that you haven't gone far enough? Do you have any idea how they're responding to this?
Well, generally, I think here's the other thing that people don't realize. The vast majority of people that I've interacted with that are undocumented, or I've heard them in interviews and what have you, the vast majority of them understand. They understand, look, this is not a good thing. This is not positive. We wish we had done this differently. It's kind of the situation that we're in now. There are all different reasons why they've happened. Most of those folks, what they want is just some level of certainty about what they need to do to get right. They're not demanding that tomorrow morning they be made something that citizen, for example. I think that there are some in the advocacy community that perhaps are pushing that. But by and large, the reception has been positive. Now, there are going to be some voices that want this issue to move to the left, to move faster. And it's what I said today. If what the president intends to do is get into a bidding war with us on who can come up with the fastest, most expedited process, then it's going to undermine this whole thing, because that's not what this is about. This is about being reasonable. We don't want to be unreasonable, but we also have to be fair to the people out there that are doing it the right way. And I remind people that there are millions of people in line right now who are waiting, who have applied, who have paid their fees. Many of their family members come to our office, and I cannot turn to those people and say, you should have come illegally. It would have been cheaper and faster. So we do want to be fair and humane, but we also have to be reasonable here about how we do this. And as I said, I mean, I think by and large the reception's been okay, but there will be voices out there, for example, that are concerned about the enforcement stuff. There will be voices out there that will want to move this whole effort to the left. And I hope my role is to keep this thing focused on common sense principles, on things that unite Americans, and on things that are good for America, because ultimately this is about doing something that's good for our country, not just good for, some voices, but not for others.
Right.
Well, let me first say this about that. They're absolutely right. And as I said today on the floor of the Senate, there is no legal right to immigrate to the United States illegally and get to stay here. There's not a legal right to do that. To the extent we address that issue, we address it, number one, because we're a compassionate and humane people, and number two, because we're pragmatic people that understand that we've got an issue we've got to confront and solve. The vast and enormous majority of Americans are supporters of legal immigration and are supportive of and welcoming of people who come here through a process that works. Unfortunately, we have a process right now that does not work. And because it doesn't work, what we have is de facto amnesty. And that's why we have to fix this process that we have now. And we have to move forward and make sure that this never, ever happens again. And this time, really make sure it never happens again. We can never revisit this issue in the future. The process that I've signed up for, the principles that I've outlined, mean that the people who are here undocumented right now are not going to get anything special. They will have to come forward. If they've committed crimes, serious crimes, they're going to be deported. If they have not, they're going to have to pay a significant fine. They're going to have to pay all the taxes that they owe from the years that they've worked here. And all they're going to get in exchange for that is a work permit. They're not going to get a green card or residency or any. They're going to get a work permit. And they're going to have to stay in that status for a significant period of time. And only after that significant period of time has elapsed, and after the enforcement mechanisms have really happened, then the only thing they will have is the opportunity to apply for a green card. That means they still have to qualify for the visa they're applying for. Mm-hmm. That means they still have to get in line and wait. In essence, all they're going to earn is the opportunity to do what they should have done in the first place. And then if they do that, ultimately they'll get their green card. And then obviously once you have your green card, within 3 to 5 years, you can apply for citizenship, which is another application process. I'm not saying that's the perfect way to deal with this. In my perfect world, we wouldn't have 11 million people here undocumented. But this is the result of decisions that were made when I was in 9th grade. And now I'm a policymaker who I see something that's hurting the greatest country in human history, and I want to solve it so that we can remain that. And this is a bigger issue now than just immigration. I hope people fully understand what's at stake here, not just with immigration, but with all of these issues. If we don't start doing some things right now, we are going to be known as the generation that is responsible for the decline of America. And there is no replacement for America in the world. There's no other country that's going to be what we once were. There isn't some other stand-in for us. If America declines, the whole world is going to be worse off. I'm not saying that's the issue just with immigration, but this is an issue that confronts this country. And I hope we can solve it in a responsible way. I'm going to do the best I can. Obviously, I know this is an issue that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, rightfully so, because they don't understand why our laws have been violated and they feel taken advantage of. And so that's why one point I need to make, when they're in that status that I described, that work permit status, they don't qualify for federal benefits. They don't qualify for welfare. They don't qualify for food stamps. In fact, the only thing I was encouraged about today in the President's speech is he made an explicit statement that people with temporary legal status won't be eligible for Obamacare, because, in fact, if they were, the potential cost of this reform would blow open another big gaping hole in our federal budget, and it would make this whole bill untenable. So that's important, too, because a lot of people are concerned about the costs of this.